Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, I know on Wednesday I kind of made a promise to you that I'm not able to keep. And what that promise was is I said, hey, I'm going to talk a lot on Friday about the April temperature pattern. I spent a lot of time yesterday and then again early this morning trying to understand this temperature pattern, and I don't have it yet. I'm going to cover what I know at the end of this forecast video about those temperatures in April, but give me the weekend. Let me look at it a little more so I can give you a more skillful forecast than the one I'm prepared to do right now. In the meantime, though, we have some important stuff to talk about. The European model is attempting to punch a hole in the drought area in the midsection of the United States, specifically the southern plains. We're going to get to that in a few moments. The European model has also trended much colder in its near-term forecast, which I need to talk to you about as well. And then, again, we're going to talk about some shifts with the precipitation pattern in South America, too. So you've been watching an animation from one of my favorite websites. It's blitzertongue.org. We're just kind of looking at where we've got some live lighting. So we're going to talk in a moment about the severe weather and heavy rains down in southern Texas. But if you just kind of take a look, we had a frontal passage that's moving through the Midwest right now. And a lot of active lightning early this morning. That's kind of sliding here through parts of Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and parts of Ohio. As we take a look here at how much rainfall we did get over the last 72 hours, we can see that this particular corridor did get some showers. We had some snow and some rain, kind of both, that kind of came right in through this part of the Canadian prairie. And then we've been watching very carefully the flooding situation that's unfolding in southern Texas. And right now, based on some radar estimates combined with rain gauges, that's how we get this MRMS product I'd like to show you. There are some places in southern Texas that have picked up in excess of 10 inches, and the flooding has been quite expansive down here, and there's more coming. And it's now, one of the big questions we've had is, how do we get the moisture back here? And when is that coming through? And I had questioned whether or not these next couple of systems were going to be capable of doing that. And we can see right now that, just looking back over the last 3 days, the early push has not been capable of getting that job done. So where do we stand this morning on our all hazards weather map? We're going to line parts of the northern border of the United States with Canada all the way over here to New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine with winter weather advisories. There's a winter storm watch in a couple of spots. And we do have out here an ice storm warning for parts of the UP. Red flag warnings in Nebraska, getting into western Iowa and surrounding areas. Also down here in New Mexico. Flood watches continue to be down here along the Gulf Coast. We have a red flag warning here. And this we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. There is an active fire that's been going on here for several days, and we need to just take a quick look at what's going on there. So our satellite data yesterday is kind of fascinating. Just take a look at this. So this was as we were working our way toward the afternoon as the sun was setting. Take a look at the storms that were popping here, also down here in parts of Texas. And then in the overnight hours, this convection deepened and brought some thunderstorms into this part of the U.S. But as I was kind of poking around, just looking at a few things. We're going to talk more about the rains and the storms in a minute. I did notice this over here in parts of Nevada. And so we're going to kind of take a quicker look in here because you can see Tahoe, you look right in through here, and it appears that we had a pretty sizable kind of blowing dust event that was coming out of parts of Nevada. Just very interesting to pick up on here while there was some isolated but locally heavy rain running through parts of Northern California into parts of Oregon. Now, earlier in the week, we know that the Storm Prediction Center had been looking at this risk of severe weather running up and down, like the Willamette Valley, the I-5 corridor. And that, if we just kind of take a look at these storm reports, let's just go to the SPC website real quick, go to storm reports. You'll note that we just didn't have it. There's yesterday's reports, and there's the day before, a couple of wind reports here. And this particular forecast, I wasn't too high on it. I showed you the images, and we kind of got a good look at the risk, but we thought it was overdone in the models. The moisture probably was the most important thing, and we weren't sure that deep low was going to be able to drive in the instability to crank off just a ridiculous amount of spring severe weather in that area. Now, of course, that's hindcast, right? I'm going back, and I get to be kind of like critical of it, but it's something important to understand there. And I wanted to show you one other area, and it's down here in Georgia, northern South Carolina. We're going to watch some of the wildfire smoke here. There's a major concern. I've been talking about it with several friends and colleagues throughout this winter. In that, remember, Hurricane Helene, which came right in through here before making this turn, going back to the mid-south, just did a tremendous amount of damage to the forest area here in the Appalachian Mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and there's a lot of debris that's been quite dry, and as a result, we are concerned about the risk of wildfires going forward. You can see the smoke from the fire that's right on the north and South Carolina border here. But unless we can bring in a lot of moisture to this area soon, there's going to be significant wildfire risk in this region going forward. So just wanted to point that out to you. So I was having a quick look at this morning's radar data. This actually starts at about 10 o'clock last night and plays through. And so here is our broad shield of precipitation to the north, some of that getting into parts of North Dakota, which was desperately needed. Got our storms here, our storms to the south, the system coming in the northwest. But at the very end, I'm just going to go ahead and pause it and just take you to the very end. I want to know if we got a good model initialization this morning. So just have a good look at this. And here's the NAM this morning at 6 a.m. And that's not too bad. I think the model was well initialized this morning. And so we're about to watch it predict the next few days here. And I want to show you something. Storm Prediction Center risk areas today for stronger thunderstorms here and here. Then we get into tomorrow, Saturday, we're watching coming out of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. And then Sunday is the first of kind of a sequence of bigger events that are going to hit parts of the Mid-South, Midwest. We have a very broad area that they've currently put under an enhanced outlook on day 3. And the conditions coming together for this, and we'll be definitely talking about this Monday morning. It'll be huge on Monday morning. Could possibly warrant an additional increase in the risk area in this region. Now, we've got all the components, so we don't need to go through all of them, but there's going to be a wave, there's going to be low-level moisture transport, there's going to be a decent amount of wind shear. So this is a multi-hazard setup in this region, everything from tornadoes to wind and hail. And to give you the details on it, 3 days out, I would just be going on and on about those things. I'm just telling you, they're coming together here, all right? So let's go back to the model and kind of get a sense on the timing. So this is starting off again early this Friday morning. We're playing through the rest of the day. So watch the rain snow line mix right along the U.S.-Canada border here. There's that ice we were talking about in parts of the UP. Now, this big ridge is feeding all of this. And so we're going to watch this moisture come out of eastern Texas into Louisiana and Arkansas. But there's a much broader trough that's going to tap into this by the time we get into early Saturday morning. And you're going to watch that system curl its way up here late in the day on Saturday, possibly opening up a stormy corridor here on Saturday. But again, day 2 is not the risky day. It's day 3, which will be Sunday. That's going to be the day we're going to watch here most closely. But take a look at the snow that came out of Wyoming into parts of South Dakota and northern Nebraska. Because as we go into the night on Saturday night, again, more ice risk north, rains coming through Iowa, southern Minnesota, and this system on its backside starts to drop in some snow. And we're going to watch on Sunday, this is only going through 7 a.m. Sunday, we're going to watch this deliver the risk of these severe storm events through this area by the time we get to Sunday night, and that is where this map is valid. Now, there's more to it than just that, and I'm going to show you more about that in a few moments, but I do want to tell you something I got a chance to work on yesterday. I don't like my website as it stands. I would like to change it. So I started trying to build something better for all of you. And I'm working on it, but I want to show you some of the prototypes. For each of the models, we're going to have the variables I like to plot, and it's going to look more like this and actually be nice and mobile friendly. So there's a bigger story with this active pattern coming through, and I want to show it to you by looking at the total precipitation. So this is going to be way more mobile friendly. It's going to preserve the original resolution of the images, and that's what I like because I had originally degraded them to what would load fast. Now watch this. European model over the next 10 days. Take a look at the regions that are getting absolutely hammered with rainfall through the next week alone. This region right in through here. I mean, there's a risk of between 1 and 5 inches of rain in that corridor. This is going to be snow. We're going to talk about more of this is going to be snow. We'll talk about in just a few moments. But here's the thing I mentioned at the beginning about the European model. Now watch. This has been our problem area, right? For months. Deep dry slots, big dust storms, can't seem to get moisture into this. The European model has a system, Saturday, April 5th, getting into Sunday, April 6th, that's trying to come through and punch a hole. Let me rephrase that. Trying to punch into the hole that is right here. And this has been the wild card. That has been the thing that needs to happen. It's also trying to dump a tremendous amount of snow in parts of Colorado, and then bring even more snow here, and also more severe weather, heavy rains into this area. Now, this is just the first week of April we're talking about, but that is showing up in other forecast systems. For example, I showed you the European operational run. This is the European ensemble. Now, the map goes through Friday, April 4th, And we're looking at the dry areas. These are the spots that stay under a half of an inch through the next 7 days. Now, I want you to watch a couple of key areas as I just add on 4 more days to this, going all the way out to the 8th. And as I do that, did you see this shrink? That didn't. But this shrunk, this whole area, meaning that there's some ensemble support for this system coming after next Friday that could get into here and finally deliver moisture into a desperately, into an area that desperately needs it. So we are going to have to continue to watch this, and that severe weather threat isn't going anywhere. So notice that on Monday, we're going to watch, here along the, the east, from Louisiana all the way to New York. This is where this current system that's going to hit this area on Sunday, is going to be moving on Monday. Then we get into day 5, okay, reload, day 6, right back into this same area. So when is this? This is next Wednesday. So there's multiple systems rolling through this pattern, and what I think is creating all of this is the fact that the jet has dipped a deep trough in here, and we've split. See this split going on way over in the western Pacific. Hawaii is here. That's how far to the west we are. And what this split is doing, and it's eventually going to give us that wave break I've been talking about all week, is it's going to invigorate more westerly flow to come across the United States for a while. And I think that's the story. Here it is. That's what the split looks like in the forecast model. There's the wave breaking over the top, but this is a high over low pattern, so we get the downstream effect of this, where the jet stream just lines itself out. And that is a deliverer of active weather. Now, by the time we get out there to April 2nd, this, wave break, this high over low is trying to approach the western United States. But man, is it, look at that. This is not blocked. It looks like an omega pattern, doesn't it? But that is not a blocked pattern. It's open, it's moving, and it keeps barreling into the United States. And here is that system around April 5th, 6th, 7th, that the European model is trying to crank off to hit into this area to deliver the moisture that I just mentioned. Now, you saw it in the ensemble. There was some support for that, but it's still 10 days away. In the meantime, coming back to the next 7 days, we've got a lot of wind with these next systems coming through. So here's your maximum cumulative wind gust forecast from the GFS forecast model. And there's just chances for a broad swath of the central, latitudes of the U.S. from coast to coast to get these wind gusts 40 to 50 miles an hour, with the strongest coming into Utah and then into Wyoming and parts of Colorado. Now, we do see some strong winds coming across Huron. We've got them coming out of here in Ontario and Lake Ontario and Lake Erie as well. But very strong winds coming through with this next system that's going to ride through. So I want to show it to you. GFS left, European right. I can't wait to add all of this to my new mapping system. I think you're going to like it. As we go forward, this is just stepping through every 6 hours. So we've watched this. We know here's our snow chances getting into Sunday. Pretty well matched in both models. There's the ice risk out ahead of it. That is the severe thunderstorm risk getting down here. Now watch. This is Sunday morning. That's the main time frame for severe weather, Sunday night. Okay? Snow pushes on east, gets into Ontario, Quebec with ice to the south. We see that. Next system comes into the northwest. This one could really add quite a bit of snow to parts of the Pacific Northwest and Sierra Nevada. I'll show you that in a moment. Then that system ejects. When are we? This is Wednesday, April 2nd. Both models have that one too. See it? Good timing. We're good out to about a week. And we're going to look at the snowfall from this one and the severe weather threat here next Wednesday, which we saw the Storm Prediction Center is already looking at as well. Then this is where they start to diverge. April 3rd, European cranking off something here that the GFS does not have. It's like a second wave that follows this that keeps the Gulf open. Much higher pressure here pushing through the Gulf around it, opening the Gulf up, making this rain. The GFS doesn't have it, and that's critical. What is the European doing? It's stalling a front, leaving it lingering right here, and the GFS is not. So what that ends up doing is it's supportive of that guy. That system. This is the one on April 5th and 6th that the GFS does not have. See it? And the European does. So significant model differences out that far. You say, well, show me what this means. That's a 10-day forecast from the European. Again, we focused here. I know there's flooding. We've talked about that for a while. But take a look at this. Watch right here. That's the European. There's the GFS 10-day. Doesn't have it. Doesn't even have quite the magnitude of rainfall here. You say, why? Well, it didn't have that second system next week lingering in this area. So European is not just wetter, but like significantly wetter. I mean, I don't know what adjective to use, but it's so much wetter. What about other models? How about the AI model? It's very wet here. It's trying to fill in this hole, but not in Kansas and not here as well. And we'll talk more about the West in a moment when I show you the snowfall forecast. So I'm going to make a point. This region in through here does have substantial risk going forward of continued flooding. This is our wild card spot. And one more model to show you here. That is the 10-day national blend of models. It has the larger dry slot with the very wet weather in here. So where do we land? Is it the AIFS from European model and the operational from the European, or is it the US models? There's one and there's the other out 10 days. It's a battle right now, and we're going to have to watch these trends all weekend. Now, why this is important is this. I mean, this is what March has done. Substantial drought development here, okay? We've been very dry at times coming out of the whole of the southern plains, other than one system way earlier in the month that snuck in like this, right? And we know that this is going to be cured in a heartbeat. This is problematic, even though there's some moisture moving through there now, and that's our red flag. Now, the West, we've had what we would call a miracle March. It's not the massive miracle March as we can get, but hey, we're on the top half of the distribution on precipitation. And just continuing with this theme, let me show you the current 16-inch soil moisture percentile. There's a lot of deficit here. And I'll be honest, I drove a lot through Minnesota over the last 2 days. I saw a lot. I drove all over this area. And I'll tell you, it feels so good here. There's good moisture in the topsoil. You just go straight west of there, and we've got issues in Nebraska. And then this issue here. This is going to be corrected, I think, going forward. The issues in the southeast, we'll start to see some correction. But that's where we're going to continue to monitor these things, because the drought monitor released yesterday bumped us up now to 45% of the lower 48 in D1 to D4. A year ago, we were almost at 20%, and we were about to head into one of the wettest springs on record in this area. So we look and see where drought has changed over the last 4 weeks. It's gotten worse in those areas that I highlighted, right? And pockets here as well. So that's the importance of this upcoming forecast, and which model gets it right is going to be critical. By the way, there's snow in this too. Now, I have spent the last month speaking to groups, and I have said that I want this badly. Actually, I want it bigger. I want it more in Nebraska and Iowa, more of Wisconsin, and all of North Dakota and Montana. Big snows. And the reason is we've warmed this whole area up, and the frost line is driven down. And snow is a good slow release process on water getting into the snow when it is in April, not the rest of the year. But take a look at the GFS 10-day forecast. It's hammering, parts of Colorado through South Dakota, Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, straight through Ontario into Quebec. And then take a look at the West. More huge snowfall coming into the West here as well. That is the GFS. Here's the European. Now, the European, remember, has that system at day 10, around 5th and 6th, that curls up right here and just opens this up for truly huge early April snowfall. I mean, this would put the cap on the upper Colorado Basin's need for snow, if this does occur. I mean, we're looking at 3 to 4 feet of snow out of this. Take a look at the Sierra Nevada, and then follow that same corridor right in through here as well. I got another one. This is the AIFS model. The AIFS model is attempting with that system coming out at the end of the forecast time period to even dip that snow into New Mexico and Texas. And what's interesting is, I just saw this morning, the CPC did do a hazard update on snowfall and looks at that on the 4th and 5th, same time period we're talking about. So these are some huge snowfall forecasts that we cannot ignore. And we're going to watch these models transition all weekend. Go to agweather.com and watch them yourself. They're all going to be there. But I want to show you some probabilities. European probability over the next 10 days of 6 inches of snow. So this is now increased over the last couple of days, right into this corridor here and in the Rockies for getting at least 6 inches. Let's go ahead and take you out more. I'm going to go out, to the 9th and 10th. And that's your probability at 6 inches. Here's 12. Oh, new model run. Darn it. Now let's go and look at that again. Just take you out there to the 10th. So there is, what is this? This is 40 to 70% chance. So be prepared for these next several systems. And if you're not in that, it's severe weather here. And if you're not in that, it's the question mark as to whether or not we can deliver the moisture back there. Because the West is going to get it. Except here. But the rest of the West is going to be experiencing this. So here is that system. This is the one. April 4th, this trough is dipping through right there. That is the one that could possibly make the delivery on the moisture into this area. There's a southeast ridge ahead of it, the pump. There's the trough, the trigger, and we just open it up. That's it. And look at that. Oh, man. Get that fold to happen, and we're in business. After that, the model says cold. And this is my big question mark going forward. First off, precip. Now remember, the precip maps you all see here include that April 4th, 5th, 6th system because that's week 2. And so it's extremely wet back into this area. But we start to get drier signals to the north, and we're going to probably stay drier after that going forward. So, sorry, I was poking around here at the European model. I want to show you the 30-day outlook through the end of April. Now, as you know, we watched this model trend very wet here because it's now capturing the next 2 weeks. This was not predicted by the model. We talked about it meteorologically, but the model didn't predict this back in mid-March, okay? So what I want to tell you is, as you go forward and we just get rid of that, and we now look at like April 12th to May 12th, that means we've now gone past the systems I just told you. It just settles back into having this be the active corridor and question marks here as to whether or not moisture comes through while the west goes over drier. That's the new model forecast. I do not have any trust in any of these right now. None. And this is my struggle with trying to tell you when I think the temperatures are going to do in April. I am lost with so many things right now. Because look at March. That was March's temperatures. Now, if you did just a La Nina analog on this, because look, we had a fading La Nina. There it is, fading back in February into March. Just fading. We had so much attribution to the flow to the MJO, right? But if you looked at every year that we had a fading La Nina, March did not look like this. March was cold in this corridor. And our statistics are now showing us that March was one of the warmer Marches in the top half of the distribution for most of the U.S., save the West Coast, until recently. So this is the confusion. This is why I told you Wednesday, I got to study this and try to figure out what kind of April pattern we're going to have. Because if you look over the next 7 days, frost line gets pretty far to the north. But don't sit on it. I mean, I think it's going to return with some cold air coming in soon, but not now. Take a look at these temperatures today. We might crack 90 in parts of Nebraska, western Iowa, southern South Dakota, southeastern South Dakota, and then where I was yesterday, right here. 83 degrees is the high. I was in Worthington. Just incredible to see that. Now, that's today's highs. Here's tomorrow. Now, of course, we know there's the system coming through over the weekend, right? The one that opens up this area for severe weather on Sunday. Major turn cold on the backside. That's supportive of the first round of, well, actually, technically, it's a second round of snow in this area. West is cooler. California, Central Valley, cool in the northeast. But we're going to push a bunch of warm air to the east as we get into Monday and Tuesday. That's when the severe weather threat is here on Monday. But then watch the rebound ahead of the next system on April 2nd and 3rd. There it is. Just opens back up while the west goes over cold. But this is what I told you at the beginning we needed to talk about. I love this. Okay, I got to figure out a way to preserve this when I redesign the site again. It's my temperature matrix, European top, GFS middle, AI model on the bottom. Now take a look at day 10 through 15. We have 3 different looks from 3 different models. This is why I have no confidence in telling you anything about these April temperatures just yet. If I told you something and you got a hint of confidence out of my voice, it would be misplaced, misunderstood. And I would be very envious of any meteorologist that feels like they've nailed it and they do get it right. So I got to spend more time. I got to look at this weekend. But there's your next 5 days, day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15. And it's these day 5 through 10 maps that have me wondering how active of an early start to April we're going to get. Because anytime you dip cold air like this in, keeping the heat over a ridge in the southeast, it just rips off systems. And that's what we've been focusing on, right? That week, not just this week, but the next week. All of the severe weather running along that border, which will be right in through here. But that is my problem. And again, we've got this La Nina that's fading. We're trying to figure out the position of the MJO. But even though the MJO says on the diagrams it's in phase 6 or 7, the rising motion is north of Australia. It's not here. I don't know. I need to study this more. I wish Madden and Julian were still around to tell me what they were figuring out here. Because, man, I don't know. I don't think it's even behaving like MJO 6-7. So I'm going to show this to you. just because you need to see it, right? There's the pattern we just showed you through the first week of April. There's that southeast ridge, actions in between, cooler to the north snow, cooler to the north or to the west snow, and troughs dipping in. All right, good. That's good in the model. Then it tries to get here by Easter. Still warm air, but cold air coming in here. Every time we've seen the model try to predict this in March, it failed. So do we keep that? So I need the weekend to figure it out, to be honest with you. I maybe even need part of next week to figure it out, to tell you if this is a real issue here. Because I know there's a lot of folks that want to get out in this section of the country and get work done. Now, you know it's super wet for the next 10 to 15 days here. But do we follow this up with cold? I don't know. I'm sorry. And look, I don't have any good multi-model support. This is that mid-April time frame. Okay, the CFSV2, April 11th through the 17th goes cooler, and then it just blasts everything back open warm. So maybe the right forecast for April is just to say your temperatures are going to do like this. I don't know, that's typical, I guess, of April. But that's where I land on all of this. And I'll tell you, my biggest problem is that all of the deepest convection is here. This is MJO phase 5, almost 4. I mean, look what it's doing to Australia. From North Australia, over here to Queensland, New South Wales, just very, very wet conditions. It's dry in China. But this is also interesting. Do you remember like 3 weeks ago when we were going into drought here? I said we need to watch for the early part of April for this to go dry again. We've started to see that in some of the models. And over the next 14 days, high pressure is trying to build back in here. And that is newsworthy. Because about 15% of the safrinha corn is grown here. It is already dealing with drought conditions from the previous 45 days. They had rain that got into this area for the last 7, and now the models for the next 2 weeks are trying to bring back drier conditions. So I got a lot on my mind as I think about this forecast as we transition out of March into April. And I'll figure it out, and we'll talk about it, and hopefully you're just along for the journey. So listen, that's all I got for you today. Have a great weekend. Be safe, and we'll talk on Monday. Thanks.